Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Wild Woman podcast. Today I have a guest, Aideen Larkin, with me. She is living in Cork in the southwest coast of Ireland, for those of you in Ireland, beautiful part of the country. And I was just thinking this morning, how did we connect? Which I often do with guests, and I have to go back. I go, how did that happen? And it's just so beautiful how we're all finding each other. I just got this feeling this morning, the tribe or gathering. I actually wrote it in a little message to a friend because I just felt it. The support is coming in, the people are coming in. So many shifts taking place on the planet, and we're letting go of so much, but so much beauty is coming in too, if we can let go of what's coming up to be let go of. And I am for sure going through that in my own life. So it's wonderful. We need and can support each other through this time. Aideen, the connection was through another beautiful guest I had on the podcast, Rena, who's a tarot reader and also a medium, really does amazing work. And Aideen had gone to her, and it was through that connection that she reached out to me. And we've just been having really lovely conversations over and back for the last few months and just found a lot of things in common and resonating between us. So I'm just delighted that she is coming on, I think, believe her first podcast. And for someone so gifted, it's just very exciting. I feel it's a really exciting time for me, for her to be here. So thank you, Aideen, for agreeing to come on and have a
Oh,
conversation.
thank you, Celine. Thank you so much for having me here.
I'm
Absolutely.
delighted. Delighted. I just felt it this morning, and I'm going to just tell a little bit about Aideen here. I mean, we'll let Aideen obviously talk about herself and her own story, but I was just really taken as I read a little bit about from what she had sent to me, and I said, my God, the gifts that so many people have had all of their lives. And I suppose we've been living in a world where maybe it often wasn't that easy to come out and maybe share them because it just wasn't the done thing. But things are shifting now, and I think we need people like Aideen more and more. She's been an intuitive and an empath from a very young age, and has been doing healing work for nearly 30 years. And again, she came to this, as many of us do, to overcome her own trauma and challenges through a dark night of the soul. And what comes to mind as I listened to her before, when we were having conversations and reading this, is just the courage it takes to do this work. But the rewards are, in my view, there is no other way. Once you start to do this work, life can open up in just amazing ways. And I think we need to talk about that more, because more of us need to hear that, particularly if you're struggling right now and listening to this. I hope that with each guest that comes on, they demonstrate the power we have within when we are courageous and get the support. We can overcome anything. That's what we're here to do. I know from studying astrology, we have everything in our chart. That was the most magical thing when I started studying astrology. No matter what you came in here to work on, you have everything within your chart to do that. So, we really do have the power. But Aideen, I'll let her talk about this, is he has trained in many different modalities, and yeah, just is here. And I just feel from talking to her, really coming into her own with her gifts. So, Aideen, maybe take us back. You said you have been providing healing for nearly 30 years, but we're always, I suppose, empathic, intuitive. What's your first memory of that in your life?
Um, well, to be honest with you, I can remember coming home from the hospital as a baby, so a newborn baby. So I have that memory. So when I look back at it now, and there's been kind of elements in my life where it's like I'm looking at my life, and I'll explain as I go through why that was. So I remember my mum and dad driving into the drive at home, and my mother had me in her arms, and my grandmother came out and she took me. And my mum and dad went into the house, and my older brother and sister were hanging off my granny to have a look at me. And we walked up two little steps into the house, and my mum went upstairs, and my grandmother brought me into the kitchen where there was a little unit with glass bottles on it, baby bottles. That was my first memory.
Oh my God.
I remember being in the cot. I remember being in the pram. I remember being in the high chair, and I didn't want to be in the high chair because I wanted to be the same as everybody else. Yeah, I just have it's a kind of a photographic memory for things.
Mm.
So as I said, there was three children and my mum and dad, and unfortunately, mum and dad were both alcoholic, so it was a very difficult house to live in. And one of the things that I can remember was a pretty bad fight that was happening, and I was sitting on the stairs, about halfway up the stairs, and my brother was in the hall, and my sister and my dad, and I can see myself sitting on the stairs, and I can see everything happening. And when I look at it now, and I didn't understand for many years what that was, it was I was being pulled out of the trauma, but I was still able to see it. So I still experienced the trauma without it being overly hurtful to me, if you know what I mean. So that's happened to me at many, many occasions in my life where I just feel I am not fully in the body, that I have to pull myself out a little bit just to protect myself. And that becomes like a replay, a video of elements in my life. Like even when I went through childbirth, it was very, very, very difficult. And I went to a doctor, would have been a couple of months afterwards or whatever. I started to suffer from postnatal depression. And she said, "Can you describe what the birth was like?" And I told her in detail. And she said, "Nobody remembers in detail like that." She said, "Just you have a photographic memory like so." But I also have the emotion behind all of that as well, so it's like going through that experience. But spiritually, I think from a young age, we would have been sent down to my grandmother and my aunt down in Kilkenny, and we would have spent our holidays down there, and absolutely loved it down there because it was completely natural. They didn't even have electricity. We had to go to a well to get the water. I loved it. I loved it. I just remember just lying on the ground, talk about earthing and grounding yourself like a child. It was exactly what we needed, like.
Mm.
But she was mad into the rosary, and they used to say the rosary. So that was my real connection with Our Lady, as some people call her, just Mary. Um, so I had a connection to Our Lady then. I just felt peace when I felt, when I used to say the Hail Mary. And of course, back then, they'd say it at 100 miles an hour. You couldn't even get the words. They'd be, Hail Mary, blah, 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 blah. I'd be going,
Yeah, it takes on a speed. It's like a
yes,
train.
why are you saying it so fast? Say it so fast because you can't feel the energy behind the prayer when you say it so fast. And that
Mm.
was probably me, maybe 6, 7 or 8 year old. And then when I was at home, I would, if I found things difficult, there was a chapel across the road, there was a boys' school, and I would go over to the chapel by myself, and I'd sit down and I would pray to Our Lady, and she would just talk to me. Like in my head, I knew, I was saying, "Please help us, please help Dad, or please help Mom, or please help us." And she says, "We have
Sorry, what
with
was?
you, reminding you, you
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
you know, and I would just feel like the most gentlest warmth around me. It wasn't like, a feeling of physical energy, but it was like just the softest kind of cloak coming around you, just to know. And I knew then, I wasn't alone. And so she's always been, the one that has been in my life, that I've turned to. So
What was it like? Just sorry, just coming. So you're
yeah.
describing that sounds like a very difficult situation to grow up in. You had an older brother and a younger sister or older sister. And you were saying, so you had this sort of sense of while all this trauma and everything that was going on, you were almost being pulled out watching it. So you weren't as, would you say you were as emotionally affected by it or
No,
how?
it wasn't all the time that I was pulled out of it. It was only in
Okay.
severe times that I was pulled
Okay.
out. I was just as much in it as my brother and my sister. Um, no, no, we were all pretty damaged coming out of it, I would say, from that, because we weren't nurtured. We didn't get what we needed. We weren't weren't seen, we weren't, and even adults, other adults in the family didn't recognize, nobody ever recognized or said, we see what's going on, are you all right? Never, ever. That really
And they
upset me.
knew, obviously they
I
knew.
realized, yeah, they knew, yeah, but it was all secret, you kept it secret. So, we had to put on an act if people came. We all stood to attention and we were all lovely and everything was perfect. It was just, it's sad, but we were great actors, to be honest with you. We should have gone into acting because we literally
I think a
could have
lot
just
of
taken
Irish.
on any role and just
Yeah.
carried it off. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so
So how did that affect you? So you obviously had that real spiritual connection. Did you were you consciously aware of there's something greater,
yeah,
protecting me? You were,
yeah.
or yeah, okay.
Just not even, I wouldn't have used the word protection because I probably wouldn't have understood that as a child, but I felt like supported or loved would have been the words I would have described as a child. And even when we had to go to mass, we would have been told you have to go down to mass, and when you were a teenager, and I'd be going to the church and I'd be kind of going, but I'm not hearing anything. I can't hear anything. I wasn't, we were just being lectured at. And so I said, okay, God, I said, if you want me to go to mass, I said, I want to hear just one thing that'll make a difference to me in my life. And I'd go in and I would hear one thing and I'd come out and I knew then, I have that connection. I am looked after. I am, supported. And it was when it was I ended up leaving home anyway. My sister, my brother left home, and I was the only one left at home, and it started to get pretty bad for me. So I was in hairdressing at the time, and I felt like I felt like I had to leave. I didn't know how I was going to do it because I wanted to stay there and protect my mum. And so my brother was living in Cork at the time, and he came back up for a couple of
Yeah,
days.
you were in Dublin, weren't you? Sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
say
yeah,
that
I
at
was in
the beginning.
Dublin, yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine, sorry. And he came up and he said, why don't you come down to me for a week, take a week's holiday. I was kind of going, work. So
No offense.
said, no, he said, do come down for a week. He said, you'll enjoy it. And I said, okay, I'll think about it. So he said, have you gone to mass? I'm kind of going, are you my dad? Like, so I said, no. I said that it's already started down in Stillorgan. And he said, well, it doesn't start for half an hour in Dundrum. You can go down there. So I went, all right, fine. Now I'm 19 now. And I said, fine, I'll go. So I went down, I walked down and I went to the church, and the church was packed. So I was sitting about 3 or 4 rows from the back, and I'm sitting looking ahead, and I'm kind of going, what am I doing here? And next thing I heard this man say, go to Cork. So I turned around and I'm looking, I'm saying, what? And there's nobody, everyone was just looking ahead, like. So I sat there again, I'm looking ahead. Heard again, go to Cork. So I turned around again, there was nobody. And then I knew that was somebody telling me, go to Cork. Because I was psychic as well, throughout all of that. I was picking up things and seeing things. But again, when you're young, you don't particularly understand what all of that is. But I knew the second time he said it, I knew that was somebody telling me, you need to go. So I went home and told my brother I'll come down for a week. So I went down for the week, completely fell in love with Cork. I love the energy. Yeah. So I decided when I went home, I'm going to look for a job in Cork and I'm going to leave. And literally everything fell into place. I got a job in Cork, handed my notice in. The week that I was handing my notice in, my grandmother died. I was devastated. So I went to her funeral of the week of my notice. And on the Sunday, I sat down in the sitting room with Dad, and I was saying goodbye, like I was moving out. And he looked so unwell, like just he hadn't been well for a while, but he was terrible color, and was saying, I didn't realize he was sick. I knew he was sick. It was the psychic in me. I was able to see through, because even as a child, I was able to see through mom and dad, through the alcoholism. I could see Dad's vulnerability. I could see his, he struggled to be, I think he struggled to be here. He struggled, you
Mm.
know,
It
and
sounds like
he,
you saw his pain as well, did you? Like
yeah,
to see.
but his heart, his
Mm.
love as well, and mum as well, I could see through her. So I was able to love them, even though all of that was going on. I nearly wanted to mind them, even though, and I did end up minding my mum, and well, we did mind them because we did everything for them, but they didn't do anything for us. But anyway, so I was saying goodbye to Dad. So he just said, "Look, whatever you do in life, I hope you're happy, and I love you." And that was, unfortunately, I did move to Cork, and he died. That was in March I left, and in August he died. So that was
Mm.
a conversation with them.
Wasn't that
And
beautiful parting words, though? They could have
yeah,
been
yeah.
very different. It's like he almost knew, maybe.
And it's funny because I always prayed for Mum to give up the drink. Oh, sorry, something came over on my screen.
You're gone from camera now.
Okay, sorry.
Are you okay? No, you're back.
So
That's fine.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
Um, so where was I? Was saying
You were just saying your mom, you were always praying she'd give
I
up.
was always praying for Mum to give up
Yeah,
the drink,
yeah.
but I never prayed for Dad. And when Dad died, oh, the guilt I felt. I just was so upset that I had never prayed that he'd stop drinking. I just felt, I could maybe have helped him or something like that. And I remember walking home from work, and I'd be bawling, crying, and in my head, I could hear him saying, "No," he said, you didn't, you didn't have to do that. It's okay. You're okay." And that was for months. He kept saying, "It's okay. It's okay. You didn't have to." It took me a long time to kind of let it go that, you know, I didn't understand back then, about, timing, or decide if I want to go and all of that, or, there's a time for everything. And I
I
suppose when,
know, but the pain, like you just lost your father and so young. I mean, like,
and I was out on my own. I was in Cork, and I was on
mm,
desperate wages, and I was away, and like my brother was there, and we had a lovely, we were in a prayer group in Cork at the time. And so yeah, you just got on with it. So I ended up going out with this guy, and he brought me on a holiday over to Cyprus. And when we were there, we got a cruise over to Israel. And when we were there, I can't stand war. I've come in with a fear of war, so I must have been in a war at some stage in a previous lifetime, or guns, or anything like that. And I was just horrified. Everything was just, young kids dressed in army gear with guns and stuff like that. But what upset me the most, because I was very much into, the church and praying to God and all of it, and I was so excited to go and see where, Jesus was born. And we got a bus to there, and the bus was actually stoned, like, because there were so many people fighting at the time over the different, things. And then when we got there was so many religions in that one little place saying it was theirs, fighting over, and I came back actually, and I dropped everything. I dropped the prayer group, I dropped the church, I dropped praying to God. I just stopped everything, because I just thought, you know, where is God in all of this? I just couldn't cope with it. It took me years to suddenly kind of come back in, and to be open again to
mm,
relate again and talking to God again. And I suppose
wow.
yeah,
The big
I
ship.
don't know. It was a crossroads for me again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like
Bit
just
like
when you
that,
say
isn't
it,
it?
that you nearly had to you found religion, God, your connection, but it was almost, what would I say, through a third party. And it was like nearly you have to, I think that's happened to a lot of us, we have to let go of that and come back in our own way to whatever feels right for us and our own connection.
But I think it's part of our journey is to really
Mm,
question, search, and
mm,
to find our truth of what we believe to be our truth, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's mostly what it was about, because
Mm,
I've been able to do, the work that I do if I hadn't gone through that experience of really pulling back and questioning everything.
And
He
what
showed.
happened then, Aideen? So you pull back from everything. So
So
how?
I did, yeah. And then I suppose, I, yeah. Well, I got married then. I got married and had my two kids, but that broke up very quickly into the marriage. My daughter, son was just three, when we broke up. And I ended up being a single mum for a while. And um, I suppose, I'm kind of skipping back and forth. When I actually, it was a couple of years after I had left home, we went back into the family home to tidy up the home, and Dad was gone, and we were making the home nice for Mum and everything. And I, there was a comment made to me when I was at home, and it really upset me. And it said that I was too young to understand what happened in the family, you know, and that just floored me. And I just thought, how could you say that? Like, I actually have, video clips in my mind, like, of everything that happened. And I did, we all went through it. But I ended up going to a beautiful lady, a counsellor in Cork, and I spent about a year and a half with her, and really worked hard with her. And, she said to me, she said, Aideen, she said, there was three children in the house, but three will come out with a different story because you process it differently, because you feel differently. And that makes it, such a huge, it's such an impactful statement, isn't it? Because you think that we all think the same, you
Yeah.
know, but we all had different personalities. We all cope differently. Like my sister was a warrior. Steve was just, he was steel, he was just brilliant. Like, and myself, I was the quiet one. I didn't talk. I kept it all in. We all reacted differently, all processed it differently, and all left with the same generic kind of story, but with different, hurts or traumas out of it. And I think that's, a fascinating thing for people to hear,
Mm.
because we always think, there's lots of people that are dysfunctional things, and we all think it's the same for everybody, but it's not. It's always individual and how we cope, because we all come in individual, and we all come in with our own coping mechanisms of how we're supposed to live and what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So
And our own
yeah,
path, really, if
yeah,
you see it that way, there's a path. I always feel like, well, I came in to work on certain things in this life. Now I do. I didn't when I was younger. I didn't understand, but it's sort of, it helps to sort of see that. And I think, yeah, I think a lot of people, I would look at my own family as well and say they probably have quite different experiences of childhood than I did, of course, because we're so completely different.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
It's the way the mind thinks. We go into the
yeah.
mental, we figure it out in a
Yes.
different way,
Yes,
isn't
in a logical way, but we're not. We are sensing, feeling beings. We feel things, we sense them, and it's
it?
so
Yeah.
much more than the logical, this happened, as you know.
So I was working with a girl, and she said to me, "There's a guy in Cork, and unfortunately, I just can't think of his name. Everybody will know his name anyway. Um, I think he since has passed." And I went for a healing session with him, and it was the first one I ever went for. And I just stood in front of him, and he just was doing energy work, and I was being pulled forward or being pulled back. He wasn't even touching me. And he said to me, he said, "Your heart," he said, "sword."
Your heart, what? Sorry, the sound there just
Sword.
a little.
There's a sword in your
Okay.
heart. And I was like, you know, someone saw it, like, but at the fact that it was still there, because I'd left home, and I was about, what, 6 years, having left home, and you think that you're grand,
Mm.
and to say that that was still there, but that had to be pulled out, like. And it was after the marriage broke up then that my sister had done a Reiki course. So she said to me, "Would you be interested in doing it?" So I went and I did the Reiki 1 and 2. But the second I started to do it, all my psychic abilities started to kick back in again. And then I met a lovely girl through work, and she introduced me. She wanted to do a course in IET, integration.
Integrated energy therapy. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And I ended up doing that, and I ended up doing the masters twice in it because I just loved the energy. So that's really where all the angels came in and started to work, that I started to work with them, they started to work with me, And again, my spiritual, or psychic abilities kicked in. Plus, because what happens is when you start to do more and more, the more you do the work, the stronger the energy becomes. So I say it's like a light bulb. So you start off at a 50-watt bulb, and the more that you work on it, you become a 100-watt bulb. So the stronger the energy is for the healing and all of that for it to come in. And so I've done other ones, like you were saying. I did a psychic course. I did it over in London in
Oh, is
Stanford.
it the one I keep hearing, the college over
Yes.
there that
Um,
everybody goes to? Oh my God, I know.
yeah. So
There's one
yeah, that
going,
was the
yeah,
mediumship
medium.
one.
Yeah.
Uh, so they were all just tools just to heighten my abilities to heal, to be able to heal. I don't heal, the people heal themselves. So I facilitate the healing. So and going back to Our Lady, then I know I've probably gone all over the place, but
No, no,
um, it has
it's
always been in my life. And actually, my first experience of a ghost was before my dad died. And I was when I left home, and I was just started in Cork, and I was working as a hairdresser at the time, and I I was so tired I could lay down in the middle of the salon. I couldn't even hold a brush in my hand. I didn't know what was going on with me, and I ended up going to this lovely doctor, and he told me, tell me, because I was new with him. He said, tell me everything about yourself. So I told him all about the child and everything. He said you can't walk away from what you've gone through without experiencing the physical. He said you're going through emotional exhaustion, you know. So it was
wow.
teased to me.
Very, yeah. At the
Fabulous doctor at that time.
But
We're all sent to the right people at the right time.
sorry. Yeah, just wanting to say that because I know, friends and they say their father was a doctor, maybe back in the, I don't know, 60s, and the way the medicine has gone now, and maybe we can be critical, but it seems like a lot of GPs back then were like, they used to say they were like a counselor, they did everything. Like it was a whole different, we have a view now of how it's become, but I
Yeah,
think many of them were deeply, I know particularly one, he's dead now, very intuitive, very sensitive, you know, really like a counselor. And,
yeah,
that's amazing to hear that. It's lovely to
yeah,
hear.
yeah. And totally made sense to me at the time. But I was sick that time anyway, and they were sending me off tests and this, that, and the other. And I ended up having to stay in my boyfriend's place, and he stayed in the room with me in a different bed. So I'm lying there anyway, and I'm after going to sleep, and then I wake up, and the window had been open. It was open, and there was a neck curtain, and I could see the neck curtain just move like that. And then I just saw this lady, a small lady, and she just went like that, floating, across the ends of the two beds up beside me. And I'm just transfixed looking at her. So I'm looking at her, and she says to me, I want you to pray with me now for your father. So I'm going, okay. And this is all, in the head like this, telepathy,
An
she's
inner
talking,
voice.
hear
Yeah.
her, yeah. And I could see her, she's doing this. And she says the Hail Mary. That was my dad's favorite prayer. So for me, it was like, you know, so I just nodded and I said the Hail Mary in my head while she was saying it. And then she just got up and away she went. So I was going, what the? And my dad died then a week later.
A week later.
Yeah.
Mm.
So there's a connection with Our Lady there again. Our Lady was preparing me as well. So I said it to my mum anyway, and she was a grandaunt that I had never known. She had died before I died because my mum says, is this her? Showed me the picture, and I went, yeah, that's her. So she came to help me. Yeah.
Mm. No.
So yeah, there has been talking about Our Lady. I was in Sorrento with mum um for a holiday, and we went into this small chapel. Mum was always going to chapels and like candles, and she was very devoted to Jesus and Our Lady. And so she was over with one statue, and I was over with Our Lady, and I was sat there. And next thing, Our Lady just said to me, Aideen, you're going to be and you're going to be working with me. So I
You're
said,
going, sorry, the sound there again. You're going to
she
be
said,
working
you're going
with
to
me.
be working with me in the future.
Okay.
So I was just nodding, but I was with her for a while. I can't remember what else we were talking about, but that was the main thing. So we finished and we were walking out of the church, and my mom said, "Did something happen?" She said, "I felt like something happened there." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Our lady, said that I'm going to be working with her." And so, it took years anyway before that actually did come about. Um, but it was when I went and I started to do metatronic healing. So I went and I trained with metatron. And before I went to do that training, I was doing a meditation, and sometimes I go off into this little chapel and I might meet people and they come and talk to me or whatever. And there was this man, very, very tall, powerful man, and he was standing there and he said, "Hello, Aideen." Oh, he said, "Hello." And he said, "My name is Metatron." And I said, "Hello, I'm Aideen." And he started laughing and he said, "I know." He says, "You're going to be working with me." I said, "Okay." I said, "That's great." So I came
And
back
do
out
you
of
see, sorry, in your mind's eye, like is it an inner vision or would you say outer vision, physical? How do they
it's an
present
inner vision.
themselves? It's an inner.
So,
Yeah,
when
you're
I do the
saying.
meditation and I go into it, it's like a little film clip that comes up. So,
Mm,
but I feel like I'm in the room, I'm walking into the room, I can see the chairs, I can see everything, I can see them. And then the hearing is the internal again, it's not,
mm, mm.
a physical voice. So I came out of the meditation and I had to Google him because I'd never heard of him.
He might have gone off and Googled you, but he didn't need to
I know, yeah. So I
know.
had to Google him. So yeah, and then
So
it happened.
describe what Metatron. I know I've heard a lot of Metatron. So he describe it. He was on Earth, wasn't he? He was a
He
did he
was,
live?
and
Yeah.
Sandafon is
Mm.
his twin brother, and they came in, and I
What's
keep it
the
very simple.
energy?
I don't go into all the
I know, but just the
newer
energy of Metatron.
but his whole thing is about dropping your story.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and he's very firm.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a powerful
So
message.
so when I am talking, when I'm actually doing a healing session with people, I'm like that. I'm very to the point. You have a choice. You can do this or you can do this. But if you do what we're telling you, this is where you will go. So you have a choice. Do you want to do this or this? To give them a power to physically do something,
Mm,
to take the
mm.
responsibility of doing it.
Yeah, well,
And
yeah,
that's what the drop in the story is, because if we go into the story, we're keeping in the loop,
yes. Oh, I
and we'll go
know.
back into the loop, isn't it? You just keep
Oh,
going
for
back.
sure. You just go back in and you're rehashing and you're wondering why is this lasting so long? It's lasting
Yeah,
so long because you're sort of feeding the story, isn't it? Feeding
yeah,
which
yeah.
one are you feeding? That's a very powerful message that you were receiving from him. So when you work with clients, given I know it's very difficult, so I know it's so unique, and from going to healing sessions and stuff, I know you probably bring in whatever is needed. But just as an example, do you work physically with people as well as yeah? So they would be
Yeah,
lying down. Is that how it,
yeah.
if
So
they're there in person? Yeah.
because I've gone through, different variations of depression and stuff like that in the childhood, and I've gone through a lot of counselling throughout my life. And so what I've incorporated into the healing session is spiritual guidance, because I'm channeled as I'm doing when I'm talking to people, and to get them to open up about what it is that they've come for. Because sometimes they forget something, but that there's something that they need to be releasing and letting go. And it's kind of good that they know what they're coming for. They might think they're coming for one thing, but they'll get a healing for something else. Sometimes something else has to be cleared before that can be cleared. I
Mm,
found
mm,
I have done that. And so what I initially do is I would have a chat to see where they're coming from. And they normally just start opening up. They start telling their story about what it is. And to be one specific, there could be lots of small things, but then it will become this one specific thing, that they hadn't really thought that they were coming for, but they start to talk about. Because you see, we have our own guardian angels or our guides and whatever. So when they're coming, they're prompting them to rethink about things and to get them ready for the session as well. So you're preparing before you even come into the room, for your healing.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I found
So
that going to healing sessions, I'm driving and or even the day before, and I go, oh, what's coming up?
yes,
It just
yeah,
starts to
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
But for people who aren't overly sensitive, that is what happens. It's about letting go of the stuff we don't need to hold on to anymore, and whatever is blocking us is stopping us from moving forward or going into a brighter path. So that needs to be released and let go. So when we do that, then I just say we're going to do it's a hands-on healing that I do. So it's very similar to the IET kind of movements, but I have different techniques now because they have trained me. They will tell me exactly what to do. So I don't know what way the healing session will go because they will guide me hand directions. They do different ways of doing things and whatever. So the client lies down and I do that energy work with them. And sometimes I'm picking up the information. And I used to pick up a trauma of, so somebody would have, where they were hurt or heartache and stuff. And I'd say, I can see in the bed when you were about 12 and you're crying your eyes out. And I said, I think it's one of your grandparents has died. I think it's the grandmother. And that really, really affected you. And that was being released this time. And they'd always say, yeah, that I was 12. And that's exactly where I can feel that memory because I remember that. But it's kind of shifting and changing the way the healing is at the moment. We don't need to know the story because, whatever's for your highest good, they already know what's for your highest good at the moment. And things have speeded up, I think, in healing as well.
Yes, we were talking about that.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
because before, like if someone came, you might need to come for at least 2, 3, maybe 4 sessions, and then sporadically. And I found that within 2 sessions, there's been huge shifts. So the energy is, it's not just that my energy is stronger, but I think it's the way the world has gone. We all need to shift and heal and get ourselves prepared for this is the spiritual shift that we're going through at the moment. So we need to be empowered in ourselves and centered and ready and strong to be able to cope with everything, all the shifts and the changes that we're going through at the moment, because too many people are going into fear and, you know, getting too much into the stories that we're being told. For me, what's going on in the world, I can look at it and I'm unemotionally involved in it. So I can see what's happening, so I'm up to date with what's happening, but I'm not getting emotionally involved in it. So as some people say, it's like watching a movie, and that's the best way of
Yeah.
surviving what we're
Yeah.
going through in the world at the moment is to watch it like a movie. But also, I think, we put the car in for a service every year, but we never put the body in for a service. You might go to the doctor, you might go to the chiropractor, you might go and get your teeth done or whatever. But it's the energy, our
We
energy,
still
our
have a
body.
difficulty, though, don't we? I'm not saying it's definitely very different to what it was years ago, but you could still have conversations with people. And if you start getting into the word energy, it's nearly like that doesn't exist. I mean, more people are aware. I mean, obviously, if someone comes to you, they come to you because they want to be there. So you don't necessarily have to get into a big explanation about it. How do you explain that if you were talking to someone else? Is it like, well, the emotional charge is held in your body, or how would you? I know you don't maybe necessarily need to always with people, but if someone was asking you, you know,
Somebody was asking me, well, we are energy. I mean,
yeah,
if you think about the emotions that we go through and how we feel differently about things. So the very simple one is, if you're in love, your energy changes and you're on a higher energy and you feel euphoric and excited and you're buzzing, yeah? And you're getting married and you're looking forward to things and you're planning and you have that high energy, yeah? But when things are not working for you, you have a lower energy, or you feel stagnant, or you feel in a no man's land or stuck. So, like, they're two polar opposites, you know? But really, we have to take responsibility for our own energy. This is what that's the one thing that I keep saying to every single person that comes to me and anybody who will listen to me is you have to be responsible for your own energy, but you have to understand your own energy to be able to do that. So you have to know when you're low. So you have to know when you're okay, and you have to know when, this is fantastic and what actually helps you to do that. So one of the techniques is a really simple one. I say to people on a scale of 1 to 10 when they come in, what number are you? And most people say they're maybe could be a 6 or they could be a 5 or a 4, you know, but there's nobody up in the 8, 9, 10s. you know. And when I'm finished the session, I say, what number are you? And it's always risen. They'll always feel better after, because you'll feel taller, you'll feel lighter, and you'll feel brighter after releasing,
I
you
know.
know.
Isn't it
Yeah,
amazing though? Isn't it
yeah.
amazing? Like, I suppose when you describe that, which is really lovely, about when you're in joy, we let things flow. So, as you said, you're in love, you're joyful, you're not like, what's going to happen next? So you're allowing that flow of that through you. But when something difficult happens, we often shut down because of the fear,
Do
and
it.
then it gets lodged in us, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
the
And then
difference
we
is,
stay in it and we
yeah,
repeat the story and we keep
yeah,
going.
yeah,
Whereas, if you take control of, see, it's the mind. So if you can be in the now, everything will be perfect within reason. Do you know what I mean? But you're balanced. You have control over yourself. You have, on a day-to-day basis if you stay in the moment. But the minute you go back into the past, you're going back into what can be a negative or lower energy. So when you start to think of that energy, lower energy is coming into the now. So you start to feel it, because it's like, when someone dies or passes away, or whatever way you want to say it, you're sad. So you're missing them. So when you start to think of them and you're going back into the stories of when you were together and you're missing them, and you can feel it, it brings it all up again. You start to feel it all in your body again, you know?
yeah.
But do you really need to go back into that? Why can't you think of the happy memories, not the joy that you had with each other, and bring in
Yeah.
that energy rather than the missing, because the missing is actually, we're never disconnected. I feel, I think we're connected by a cord. We're always connected. We're always going to meet up again. So there's no disconnect. It's just that, what is it? I had a saying,
The
and it's,
amnesia.
those who have gone before us are no longer where they once were. They are now wherever we are.
Mm.
So there's no disconnect. It's just we can't see them, you know. And I know they have to go off and do their thing, but sometimes they do come back in, and you can feel their energy around you, which is lovely. You know that they're still thinking of you, and they're looking out for you on the other side. That's my thinking, and just keeping it simple, like, whether you believe it or not, that's okay. But
Yeah.
it's what I'm saying about the energy is, you have a choice whether you want to, feel low or feel good.
But it is
So
the responsibility, isn't it? It's the biggest shift, I think, in our time now.
yeah,
And I felt it after cancer sort of wake up in me back in 2016. It's this, but I never felt it, thankfully. This victim of, oh my God, I got cancer. I was actually very relieved. I've said it often because I knew I couldn't continue the way I was living and I was feeling awful. I had suppressed so much for so long. Something had to be the catalyst for that to start being, as you describe, being, released so that I could live a much lighter, more fulfilled life. And it is the case. There's still more layers. So, that sometimes those things have to happen, don't they? Like, how I wanted to ask you, how would you now look back on the childhood that you have? What, let's say, purpose has it served, do you believe, in your life, that you came in and had to go through such pain, really, with your parents
I
both
think
being
it's,
alcoholic and not being looked after and do,
yeah. I did a meditation. I must have been in my 20s, and I went into this field, and there was this American Indian. We always say we have an American Indian guide. It's the only time I really saw this American Indian guide. So and there was all these teepees in the field, and he just beckoned. He said nothing. He just beckoned me. He just said, go into that one. So I went in, and there was all these photograph frames on the sides of the teepee, and he was going, have a look. So then I could see me as the child on the staircase crying. Yeah. And then I could see me as, and then I could see me as, and then I could see what was happening. And this was from the ages of, 1 to 12. And they became videos. It wasn't a picture. So it was the scenarios were being played out. And I was going, I picked that one, I picked that one, and I picked that one because I know I'll be able to cope. Yeah. And then he brought me into the next TP.
and sorry, how do you mean to pick them? He asked you to pick some of them.
No,
No,
I
no.
picked I picked them. It's like as if, before we come in, we know what challenges we're going to
Oh,
take.
yeah.
Like,
So you
like
were picking
say,
those before.
bit
Yes.
like saying, if you put all your troubles into it, if we had 10 people, you put all your troubles into a pile on the ground, you still pick out your own because you're able to cope with them.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Then I went into the next one, and that was up to the age of 20, 10 to 20. And I was going, I picked that one, I picked that one, I picked that one. Yeah. And now as an adult, I go, what in the name of God was I thinking? Picking all of them. But to answer your query is, I suppose it gives me uh, I probably always came in as a spiritual person. I wanted to heal because I always wanted to heal my mum and dad. I always went to the vulnerable people or someone that wasn't feeling, well in school, and I would have been, trying to make them feel good. Or so it would have been part of my inner, being of wanting to help and to heal people or to make a difference, to make them feel good or, better. And I suppose having gone through all of the experiences I've gone through, at least I can resonate with people who've come from that situation or who've come from, broken marriages or who have felt neglected or not seen or um, who've gone through depression. And I've gone through different types of depression, not even just, one type of depression. So it's, I have empathy now because I've had to work so hard to come out to where I'm at now and to be healthy and whole and feel grounded and feel like, I'm at the end of releasing my layers. Because what happens is, when we come in, the first time we get hit with something, it's the first layer of the onion. And then something else happens as the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. And the more that we have, the more it's hard for the body to cope with the weight of it. And it can manifest into the physical of something happening, you know. So like for me, the depressions that I've gone through is because I've gone through so much mental, hurt, that it then developed into an overload that came into a depression, you know.
Okay.
So if you kind of can look at it from that sense. So, but we can, if we're aware of our bodies and aware of why we are going through what we're going through, we can change that. We can improve our well-being and our health and our mental, because we're made up of the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, and the cellular memory, which remembers everything. So, it's the mental and the emotional that are our targets to weaken us if we don't mind them, that manifests then into the physical, you know.
Mm.
So like if I
I
was to
lo-
say,
mm.
yeah, I was going to say, if I was to say to anyone, like as I said, if you can put your car in for a service every year, it covers all aspects. Because like for the mental, you'll go for counseling. For the physical, you go for the doctor. For the emotional, you might go to somebody to uplift you or to do something. Like there's three different people needed to do healing on all those levels. Whereas one, really good, and I'm not just promoting myself, there's wonderful healers out there, who are there to facilitate your healing. And that's three bodies, and actually the cellular memory is taking out the trauma, you know,
Yeah. But
that
isn't
can
everything
depress.
starting energetically? So, I mean, to me, it's key. I mean, I'm nothing wrong with going to a doctor, and you can meet
Oh,
fabulous
no, no,
doctors.
we need
Yeah,
all of them.
yeah,
We need all of them. And
yeah.
that sustains us, on a day-to-day or week or month or whatever basis. But when the stuff is held within you, it's
Mm.
releasing those blockages. Is
Absolutely.
that
That's
can
what I'm saying. I think that's
Yeah,
key, though, to all
yeah,
of it, because it will
yeah,
manifest in a physical, like I had, dis-ease, unless you
yes,
start. And I have no doubt it would have come back, only that I made the choice. I am going to get to the root and start healing this because I want to be empowered in my life. I want to be healthy. I want to live a joyful life. So, there is, when you talk about the responsibility, sometimes it can sound a bit harsh. I know, and but I know it isn't, and I know it isn't in your case or mine. There is that sort of tough love in one way, isn't there? Around, or how do you see it?
nobody can make us happy, only ourselves.
Oh,
That's
I
the bottom.
know, but well, yeah, but there would be
You know,
there's
but
still
that's
many, yeah,
but we're always looking for the external to make us
yeah,
feel better.
yeah,
But in truth, that's not really going to happen unless we do it for ourselves.
yeah.
It's
It's
only
the end
that.
result, really.
Yeah,
What you're seeing in the outer world is just a reflection of what's inside.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. Yeah. So, in terms of you were saying there, you work with people obviously who come to you in Cork, but you do work remotely. So, obviously, people can have a session with you, can't they,
Yeah,
online?
100%, because I'm able to pick up the energy remotely. I know it sounds daft, but
No, it doesn't. I've had many energy healings remotely, very powerful. So,
but
yeah.
but the first time I ever got paid for a healing session, I went and I bought a big teddy bear. So he's about, that size, a big teddy.
Mm, mm.
And that's what I use for my distance healing. But the second I put my hands on the teddy bear, I'm picking up the person's energy, and I know where the blockages are, and I'm able to release and do everything. And it's exactly the same if the person is in the
It's
room.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
really incredible.
And again, there's no time and distance, in anything, because, your team is connected to my team, and the energy there's no difference. You could be in Australia or anywhere, and we're still able to work with you and work with that energy and to clear it. And so I would do a chat beforehand, on a Zoom call. Then I do the hands-on healing, and then I would have a chat afterwards to say, see where you're at, how you're coping, and did anything come up for you? And then I'd relate back if anything came up that you need to know, or what was said or done, and whether or not we feel like we need another session and stuff like that. So there's no time and difference in anything. It's just, which is wonderful as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
In itself.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's what this time has shown us, that just how
yeah, yeah.
powerful, particularly when we went into being locked up, that you could start to see, wow, you could connect with people and feel their energy straight away and go, oh, it's sort of give it that space, didn't it, to open up those abilities that maybe in a busy life, you just sort of discard and don't really, there was a lot of space there for that. And I think it's
Yeah.
changed how we all, well, it definitely has for me. It's changed the people in my life. It's changed how I trust myself. I think the biggest thing I've grown in is trust of myself. How has that always been there, even as a young child for you?
Trust in myself. Yeah,
Mm.
I always kind of, I would talk to myself. I would counsel myself as a child nearly. Yeah. Yeah. Because, well, I know I had Our Lady, and I'd be saying, you're fine, you're fine. I would be just keeping it, keeping that out, and keep trying to keep this okay. That's what
Mm.
I used to try and do. And yeah, I've always been aware of my own stuff, and I'd always be very aware of, how I speak to other people, make sure that I wouldn't be harsh or anything. Or if I make a mistake, and we all do, and I had a bad day and I took a snarl at somebody, I'd be the first to say, oh, I go straight back and say, I'm so sorry. I said, that day I didn't take it out on you. It's me. I was going blah, blah. I would never let things linger. I always deal with things as they come up, which it has
Mm.
been good for me, because anytime I ever went into a low or I had a depression, I went and got the help straight away. So I would work on myself always to get myself
Mm.
an
So you
okay
know
place.
how to ask for help. That's often
Yeah,
difficult as well, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah.
So
That's
what
what
do you
most.
feel with all you've been through? I don't know how this is just coming up. Like, what do you feel you're here for now? We're living at a particular time, a big shift in evolution on the planet. It's happening. We feel at I always go to the astrology because I love it, but there's lots of other signs, and I think many of us are feeling it, and the measurements of all the solar flares and all the things. So what if you're now today, and it's interesting, I just say to the listeners as well, I pulled a card before we came on, which I sometimes do, and it was about stepping into the unknown. And I feel really strongly that is where we are all being called to live now. That is new earth, five dimensional, whatever you want to call it, living. It's the way we're designed to live, living. Okay, I don't know what's next. I'm just going to honor what I'm feeling. So, what's where are you at with all that?
I think I'm meant to step up, because I've always been private, and for me to even do this is putting myself visible, which is a miracle in itself, because I don't mind doing it quietly, and getting on with it.
You did reach out
But
to me, so I'm saying
yes,
something is rising up in you that you did,
yeah.
which is brilliant.
But it was Rena actually said to me, "You're invisible. You have to be visible." Because I have work to do, so I need to be visible for people to see me, to come to me. so that I can help them to get to where they need to get to. And it's about releasing fear. That's the biggest thing I've learned in the last year for myself, is releasing the fear. If you can release the fear, you're taking your control back in your life. You're not letting life dictate how you live. I think that's the biggest thing I can say. And I think if you can get to that stage and heal the traumas, remove the blockages, you're going to be stepping into a brand new world as well, whoever comes and does that clearing, because you're taking your power back. You're coming back into your own. We've been dampened down so much throughout our lives in how we live. We're all trying to survive, lack of money, trying to pay bills, going to work, having no time off. We're depleted of energy. And it's to get that zest in our life back again, to be able to do what it is we want to do, to live the life that we want to live, and not to live in fear, and to feel like we are supported. And the more of us that are coming together, like, all the people that you're bringing together, the more that we all come together, the stronger we'll become, and the easier it'll become.
Yes.
And we just want more and more people to be, on that path, not living in the fear of what's going on a day-to-day basis, or where am I going, or what am I going to be doing. You don't have to ask those questions if you actually just take responsibility and start to work on yourself and just get yourself centered and to know yourself and to know what it is you really want, because we all came in knowing what we want. Like, I've always known I wanted to help. I always wanted to teach. And
Did
this is,
you?
yeah. But I've realized, even when I'm doing spiritual coaching, that's my teaching, and I've always wanted to help people, and that's the healing. So, it was already there, but I didn't know what that was back then, because it wasn't around, and
Yeah.
so that's the biggest thing I think for myself, is I would love to meet as many people as possible. And to be honest with you, what I would love most of all is to be able to get into schools and to teach, especially, I'd go into primary schools, whatever age that they'd have an understanding. I would go into a secondary school
Badly needed. Badly needed.
and to help them to understand how your energy works, how the body works, and why we think the way we do, and to stop them going into the fear mentality and to follow their paths. That's my passion. That's what I would love to do most of all, is to be able to get in and help young people. Like,
Yeah.
I love anybody who comes to me. I've all different ages. I've younger people.
Fabulous. I know that feels just gorgeous. I went into schools for years, 10 years. I went around the country when I was in the university, and I just adored it. But a point came where I said, I'm not teaching what I want to teach.
Yeah,
I felt I was in a sales role, but it was, they are the initiations and they are the learning and the growth we've to go through. We can look back and go, why did I do that? But everything is serving the next phase and the next stage. I've always found that, isn't it? That, you
it
know,
is. And I do think, I do feel for the younger children and teenagers now, because they have gone through such a difficult time. At least I had a happy enough childhood, outside of my parents, where, I was out in the countryside and peace of mind, and you weren't worried about anything, but now the way the world has gone, it's just chaotic for them, like, and especially after what we went through back in
mm,
2019, 2020, it was taking everybody's freedom away and making us
maybe
so,
that has to happen for us to even know,
yeah,
the freedom. And in another way, I suppose we hear that on one level it was, but I think it woke many of us up to, well, for me, what is true freedom? Nobody can take my freedom away. I can have inner freedom to know who I think that's the greatest freedom, knowing we're always free. If you know who you are, you were always free. But
yeah,
we almost need the physical to sort of shake us into that,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
To that realization. And it's still happening for some and not for others, but that'll happen in its own way. I suppose that's just the catalysts that come into each of our lives, don't they, to shake us out of the amnesia if we're in it.
Yeah, I'm very, very hopeful for the future. I really do think
Oh, me too. Me
we
too.
are going into better times. I know in the middle of all of this, I don't see this. This is just a blip.
Yeah.
I see us moving
Well, it's the
into.
clearing, isn't it,
Yeah,
Aideen? Like
yeah,
if I lived back, and I'm sure you can tell stories of 4 or 5 years before I got cancer, they were some of the dark, not the darkest, but some of the darkest. Like, I felt so, because all of this stuff had to come up to be cleared for me, and it
yeah,
ultimately ended up in a cancer. So in the world, as someone said to me the other day, like we've had thousands of years of suppression and many different things. So how quickly do you expect this to clear off the planet? And it can't not until we see it. So I suppose we have to keep saying that because I get lost in it too. But this has to be witnessed for it to say we don't want this anymore. What's your choice? Do we want this or not?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you have to make a choice what you want. And, do we really want to see? I want to see. I've always
What would
seen,
you like? What's your vision for Earth going forward? How would you like?
well, I want to go back to, back when I was the child down in the 1970s. And, you went to the baker for the bread and you went to the butcher for the meat and you ate natural food and it wasn't processed and you were able to lie in the ground and ground yourself and people helped each other and you sat around tables and told stories and you were creative and yeah,
That is
that's
where we're going because
yeah,
I feel that, and I think many do. So if we're seeing it, it's here. It's here. We just have
we're
to sort
there
of.
for each other and we're helping each other and there's nobody will feel alone. And I think one of the saddest things in the world at the moment is the sense of loneliness that people can, and we don't want that. We're not alone, but we're made to feel we're alone. And because we're all so busy and distracted doing stuff, people don't get to come together. And it's about the people coming together and seeing each other and supporting each other. That's
Mm.
that's that's really like what I'm envisioning is, that it's a
It's
brighter.
back to simple value, really, isn't it? Sort of more, I feel that too. I had an image when I was going to a healer while I was going through cancer, and she brought me to sort of an image of like, say, 10 years down the road. Now, it was very it could be more than that, but a vision of the future. And it was like being around a campfire and being out, in community. It was like going back to very tribal. I love the word tribe. We're designed to live in our tribe, and that doesn't make us, intolerant of another tribe. We're all so beautifully unique. I think this is part of where the shift is happening now, this talk about diversity and inclusion. Let everybody, if it's like as we align and found each other, that's just a natural, that's the way children do in school, don't they? If you leave
Yeah,
children alone,
100%. You gravitate to,
yeah, you're not
you
excluding
gravitate to the
others.
same frequency, but you
Yeah, yeah,
gravitate to,
it's a
but you have to be
natural.
careful if your frequency is low, you're gravitating to the low
Yeah,
frequency,
but it's
you
an
know.
energetic
Right.
resonance that I
Yes.
think we have to own again. This is not
Yeah.
about we're being told stories that is not the case. A child naturally is drawn, if you see, just a that's just a resonance. It doesn't mean anyone else is bad. So I
No, no.
no, but I mean that's what
Just
we're
like an
taught
echo.
now. So we need to, well,
But
I'm just saying it
I know that's
because
hard to say, but there is, because I don't know.
yeah.
It's
But we're any other words that you would like to share before we draw to a close that we haven't talked about?
no, I'm just wax lyrical and, you're responsible for your own energy. Go and do what it is you need to do to get yourself to where you want to get to. And there is places and people to go to get that. But, if you want change in your life, you have to change.
Mm.
Yeah.
And become visible. I think it's
Yeah.
time for all of us to become visible,
Yeah.
whether we want to or not. I've heard many people say that, and sometimes I feel like that myself. I was like, how did I ever end up doing a podcast? I never wanted to be visible, but there's a time when it's sort of a time when we've ripened ourselves. You're doing beautiful work and have so much to share and offer people, like anyone listening now who may be struggling and will hear and words that you say, because we each have such a unique story, each of our stories, not getting bogged down in stories, but you know what I mean, and our energy will resonate with certain people. So there'll never be enough of us doing this work, isn't there not? We just need more and
People
more
need to
people.
know who you need to go to.
Yeah,
Whoever you're drawn to is who you're meant to go to.
yeah,
Anyone who comes to me, I always say it's divinely guided to me because, it's the right energy for them at that time and it's the right time, you
yeah,
know? Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And if people, so if I'll put all your contact details in the description box here. Ideally, you have a website. Is that the best way to make contact with you, or what do you prefer? I'll put up whatever details.
Yeah, if they go into the website, there's a link there, but there's also my telephone number is on that, and there's a message that you can send me. So if you want to, I'll have your email and I can reply. And even if it's just to have a chat, that's fine as well, just to see if this is really what you want or whatever. That's perfect. There's no obligation to say anything. It's just open up a conversation to see if you want to know, is this really something that would be suitable for me or whatever. But even if you're going to message, you're divinely being, pushed to make an effort to do something for yourself, maybe. So, yeah, just go through the website, but my phone number is on that as well.
Yeah, beautiful. And I can testify to even when you contacted me first, Aideen, and I always get a feel, even when someone leaves me a message, I can just straight away go, oh yeah, I feel something here, or I don't, or whatever it is. So it's so powerful, and I was just very taken with how just very kind and compassionate and intuitive and just yeah, you just beautiful, beautiful energy. So thank you for the work that you're doing in the world. It's time that more people know about you and find you.
And thank you. I can't thank you enough for making me visible. It's
Well, we hope so, and
nicer.
it's the start. It's the start.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, we're all doing our bit as best we can, and building community. And I think sometimes when I feel a little bit not jaded, but a bit down, and I'm going, oh, is anything really happening? But I always just get the sense of all of this new foundation is being built, and a lot of it's sort of invisible initially as we do our own work and we connect remotely often with people. Like I have a whole other world to what many might see, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
starting then to come above ground. And I think that will just naturally happen as the old starts to collapse. I think as more people, like you said, feel I'm ready. I just cannot deal with the pain I'm in any longer, or the unhappiness, or a situation in my life, whether it's a marriage or a job or anything. Once you make that step, it just only starts to get better, doesn't it? It's really, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Aideen. And until the next time, take care for now.